Hence, Shareeka Angamia joins us via Zoom. Shareeka, welcome to the program, Clinical Psychologist. First and foremost, I think before this package, we had another one of kids in Diepsloot. They're also studying for matrics exams. They don't have electricity. It's been a tough year in general, but matric is a tough year period, regardless of all the other knock-on effects that come along with pandemic years such as we've had this year.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 100%.
Speak to us about this, Shareeka. You know, what do kids do? It's overwhelming, as I said, in general, having to write your matric exams. I've got a colleague who was sitting next to me and saying earlier, look, as far as my kid's concerned, go write your exam. If you pass, you pass. Do what you can, because at the end of the day, psychologically, most of our kids, most of our students are just either not there entirely, or some of them have given up, and this is not too good for mental health.
Exactly, 100%. I think, you know, our mental health, and I think especially matriculants, their mental health right now is an integral part of their performance. They are living through unprecedented times. The younger generation is now born into a time of, you know, ongoing political, economic, and now health upheavals. So these stresses are playing not just on a global scale, but they're playing in matriculants' personal day-to-day lives as well. Like you mentioned, there's been so many adjustments that they've had to make, so many different, like basically a brand new way of living. So matric this year, and matriculants this year in particular, will have to really find a lot of resilience, and basically a different level of resilience compared to matriculants of other years, because of the, you know, COVID-19 pandemic and basically what we as a country have gone through in the past year. Mm-hmm. So I think what basically they're going to have to do is focus a lot on their mental health, more so than maybe matriculants in the past.
Shareeka, maybe let's touch on that before you continue. I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with matriculants in the past. You know that, I mean, I remember when I was in matric many moons ago, the stress of wanting to not disappoint my parents, the stress of thinking, if I fail, what my fellow students or my people I go to school would think of me. We hear day in and day out, matriculants take their lives, the stresses in general of being matric, because that's when we see, or you think, that will define your future.
Exactly. I think stress can severely impact the performance of many matriculants. Oftentimes the stress leads to having low motivation. Sometimes matriculants, especially during this time, have inadequate support. They can have feelings of low self-confidence, a huge fear of failure. What are other people going to think if I failed? How come my peers could cope but I couldn't cope? So all these different emotions are leading to a very enhanced matric experience in terms of stress. So I think what's going to be very important this time around is to manage matriculants' emotional well-being as part of the exam preparation. Not just studying, not just you know, finding resources in terms of your actual content. It's going to be a total emotional and mental preparation for this year's exam. So I think managing stress is going to be crucial for a matriculant's basically their performance. So yeah, I think getting coping mechanisms is going to be a massive thing for matriculants.
And we know, Shareeka, that if you don't cope, then depression comes in, and it affects individuals in different ways, as it were. Parents as well would sit back and say, on any normal year, I hope I've done enough. I hope I was a good father or mother. I hope that all those days or hours I put in will not affect him. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and it also affects, as I said, depression is one of those things that we tend to not look into as being a major danger, in particular to youngsters who are in matric.
Exactly. I think, you know, because of the phase of life, the developmental phase of life that a teenager is in, and especially a matriculant, parents often say, okay, they're very stressed, they're very moody, so we'll overlook or just try and, you know, stay out of their way and not really get too much involved in terms of the actual studying, in terms of the, you know, their mental health. So parents do tend to overlook certain warning signs for depression. So, and also, in all fairness, it isn't always easy to recognize or differentiate between normal clinical teenage stress or anxiety and actual clinical depression or clinical anxiety. I think what happens is teen depression goes beyond just being moody. So I think maybe what I can suggest for parents is in terms of looking after your children, in terms of looking after your teenagers, I think looking for symptoms of depression is going to be very crucial during this time. So looking for increased sadness, increased irritability, a mood that you're not used to seeing in your teen that's almost a bit extreme. So things like frequent crying, maybe isolating from friends and families, in particular friends, isolating from their friends, maybe losing interest in activities that they used to enjoy, changes in appetite, getting increased headaches, feeling very tired all the time. These are just some of the symptoms that parents can look out for that sometimes get overlooked because teenagers are seen as moody or seen as, it's just a phase that they're going through because of matric. And you can overlook these very crucial warning signs. I think what some teens tend to do is they also tend to act out during these times. So they can perhaps start using substances, start becoming very violent, engaging in a lot of acts of violence at school. You find that they get into a lot of fights, finding ways to escape, maybe getting onto social media on their phones all the time, things like this. So these acting out behaviors, these enhanced feelings that parents maybe wouldn't usually pick up in other times, they should really be attuned to their teens at this time. It's so important to pay attention to any of these suicidal warnings, signs as well that, it's matric is so difficult, I wish I just wasn't here, I wish I was dead. Those types of phrases shouldn't be overlooked either.
Shareeka, before I let you go, we run out of time, but please as well for the student as well who's in matric or even in standard 9, because a lot of pressure as well for standard 9s looking forward to go to matric. What should they look at themselves to try and pick up if they've got the signs of being depressed, if they've got the signs, Shareeka, of feeling stressed out? What do the kids, being a clinical psychologist yourself, would you say, maybe if you feel this way and this way, know that you need trouble, speak to somebody?
I think with especially at this time, matriculants need to be very aware of their mental health. They need to create coping mechanisms. If they find that they're getting frequent panic attacks, they're feeling very, very overwhelmed to the point where they can't concentrate, they can't study, they're feeling way more emotional than usual, then I think at this point, it would be crucial for a matriculant who's feeling this way to have a trusted person to talk to. Talk to somebody who you can really let your feelings out to, who you can really express what you're going through. Try not to bottle it in. Have some sort of a routine, a self-talk routine where you speak positively to yourself. Try and have daily affirmations to try and boost your mood when you're feeling very stressed and very overwhelmed. Even things like taking breaks. People and matriculants often think I need to be studying all the time. And that is very helpful, but taking breaks to give yourself a mental health break during the day is so important. So I think being very proactive about mental health, if you're noticing any of the symptoms that I mentioned, being overly emotional or too, physically not feeling well all of a sudden, creating things like, doing meditation, doing yoga, getting adequate exercise.
Shareeka Angamia, thank you very much indeed for joining us there. Shareeka Angamia, who is a clinical psychologist, speaking to us about, some of the upheaval that matriculants will be facing, in particular the fact that matric exams are just a couple of days away, some of the mood swings that they'll be going through, some of the, what can I call it, depression, symptoms of depression that parents can pick up on, symptoms of being overwhelmed from their kids, what they should do, mental health, quite important in what Shareeka Angamia has mentioned there, that we should look into as parents, as matriculants look to go write their final paper, in particular this year, where it's been a bit of a tough one with the coronavirus pandemic.